On board the Rysorian flagship, the crew raced through the ship's sleek metallic corridors. Alarms blared, and the ship's shielding, normally a pulsing steady blue, was flickering violently, casting shadows over the panicked faces of the alien crew. This shield was their pride and glory, a product of generations of Rysorian technology, engineered to withstand the very stars themselves. Yet here it was, crumbling, disintegrating into faint sparks and wisps of energy with each fluctuation. For the Rysorian engineers, this was beyond comprehension. A failure of their most trusted technology was unheard of. Inside the control room, officers and technicians exchanged frantic looks, each tossing out frantic suggestions. Rysorian Engineer 1, maybe a power reset will stabilize it. Divert all auxiliary energy. Rysorian Engineer 2, no, that could create an overload. We need a containment field, something to buy us time. In the middle of the commotion, the lone human aboard, Jake, stood quietly to the side. Watching the flashing displays and critical alerts, he sipped his coffee, observing the chaos unfold. A calm smile touched his lips as he watched his Rysorian counterparts run through every high-tech solution they could think of. Finally, he cleared his throat. Human, you ever tried rock salt? The room went silent as the aliens turned to look at him, blinking in unison. Rysorian Commander, excuse me, human, you suggest salt? Human, yep, rock salt, basic Earth stuff. Might be just what your shields need. The aliens stared in utter disbelief. Rock salt? A simple, ancient mineral from Earth? To them, it was as if he'd suggested using sand to put out a star. But as the alerts grew louder and their usual methods failed, desperation outweighed skepticism. The Rysorians nodded reluctantly. Grinning, Jake approached the console, holding up the bag of granules. He casually sprinkled a handful of rock salt into the containment field near the shield's relay node, eyes calm as the minerals scattered and began to settle. A moment later, the shield's pulsing evened out, and the critical alerts faded as the blue energy field stabilized. The aliens were stunned, speechless. Their gazes darted from Jake to the console and back, their minds struggling to process how something so primitive had saved their ship. One thing was clear. From that day forward, their protocols would never be the same. The Rysorian crew was known throughout the galaxy for their precision and adherence to protocol. They were meticulous, organized, and by their own standards, technologically unmatched. Every system on board was crafted to withstand any cosmic hazard, every function optimized for peak efficiency. Their shield was their crowning achievement, a technology meant to hold up against the worst the galaxy had to offer. It had been built to withstand solar flares, meteor showers, and even the occasional asteroid storm. When they welcomed the human engineer Jake onto their ship as part of an intergalactic alliance program, they had done so reluctantly. Humans, while resourceful, were known for their unconventional approaches. The Rysorians preferred the term primitive. The humans had joined the alliance recently and came with their own particular strengths. But many Rysorians believed the humans had much to learn from them. They'd expected Jake to observe, maybe take a few notes on their superior technology, but surely not contribute. But now, as the critical shield failure took the crew by surprise, those expectations were being put to the test. Alarm lights flashed across the consoles as Rysorian technicians scrambled from one monitor to the next, each offering suggestions to keep the shield from completely disintegrating. Jake watched, leaning back against a wall, sipping a cup of coffee he had brewed himself earlier. The Rysorians had at first been baffled by the human ritual of coffee, a bitter, black liquid humans relied on daily for energy. Now, in the middle of the chaos, they barely noticed Jake taking another calm sip as they frantically relayed instructions. Finally, Jake sighed and spoke up, just loud enough for the Rysorian commander to hear. Human, you know, back on Earth, when tech starts failing, we sometimes turn to simpler fixes, sometimes even physical ones. The commander, ears still ringing from the alarms, glanced skeptically at Jake. Rysorian commander, and what kind of fix would you suggest, human? This shield was crafted by the finest engineers on our planet. It's not something that can be mended by hand. Jake gave a half smile, reaching into his bag. He pulled out a small pouch labeled in Earth script and held it up. Human. Sometimes a little bit of rock salt does the trick. Several Rysorians looked his way, their expressions a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Rysorian engineer. Rock salt? An earth mineral? Our shields are designed to withstand cosmic rays and extreme plasma radiation. What could rock salt possibly do? Jake shrugged, unfazed by their skepticism. Human. Rock salt's unique. It's helped with grounding back on Earth for centuries. We've even used it to stabilize old systems when nothing else would work. Trust me. The Rysorians exchanged doubtful glances, but their desperation was growing. All their advanced procedures had failed. Against their better judgment, the commander gestured for Jake to continue. With a calm confidence, Jake stepped up to the console and, under the watchful eyes of the entire Rysorian team, scattered a handful of the salt near the shield's containment field. Jake, the human engineer, was as relaxed as they came. He carried a small pouch of random items, a multi-tool, some duct tape, and a bag of rock salt. When the aliens first saw him unpack, they found his items curious. To them, it seemed strange that he valued such primitive objects. They hadn't thought much more of it, until now. Jake moved up to the shield console, holding up his bag of rock salt. Rysorian technician. That's earth mineral? Human. Yep, rock salt, simple but effective. He gave them a reassuring nod. Sometimes basic things are all you need. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances, still skeptical. How could something as primitive as rock salt stabilize a shield crafted with cutting-edge technology? Rysorian commander. Our shield systems are built to resist atomic particles and plasma bursts. How could rock salt help with something so advanced? Jake smiled slightly, shrugging. Human. It's an earth thing. You'd be surprised by how handy minerals can be. Sometimes, things just need a little grounding. Despite their misgivings, the aliens decided they had no other choice. They had tried every protocol, every procedure. Nothing had worked. And now, all eyes were on Jake as he calmly opened his pouch, pulled out a handful of rock salt, and scattered it around the containment unit. With the salt settling in, he tapped a few keys, waiting as the mineral worked its way through the shield's energy fluctuations. Slowly, the alert lights faded. The shield's blue energy pulse steadied, humming with a renewed consistency. A quiet spread over the control room as the shield regained its stability. Rysorian engineer. This can't be possible. Rock salt, actually stabilizing our shield? Jake grinned, giving a small nod. Human. Sometimes simple is better. Basic minerals, some salt, it's kept us going for centuries. The aliens stood speechless, staring at him. The Rysorian scientists began scanning the shield field, analyzing every trace of energy and ion output. They hadn't anticipated this, something so primitive having such a significant impact. The room was filled with the whirring of their scanners as the alien engineers took notes, muttering among themselves. Rysorian scientist. The salt particles appear to have neutralized certain reactive fluctuations, somehow. Jake just leaned back, crossing his arms casually. Human. Sometimes you just need to let go of all the fancy tech. It's not about what's most complex. It's about what works. The Rysorians had been trained to use the most advanced technology, to rely on flawless designs and impeccable engineering. Now, watching a human with rock salt accomplish what all their protocols couldn't, they found themselves doubting everything they knew. As Jake scattered the rock salt, the shield field began to stabilize. The frantic alarm lights dimmed, and a low hum replaced the piercing siren. The Rysorians watched in awe as their ship's prize defense system pulsed with renewed strength. For them, this solution seemed impossible, like solving a complex equation with basic arithmetic. Rysorian technician. This defies everything we know. You've stabilized a galactic-class energy shield. With salt? Human. Yep. Sometimes it's all about knowing where to sprinkle a little Earth wisdom. For a moment, everything seemed fine, and the crew breathed a collective sigh of relief. But just then, a new alert flashed on the console. Shield temperature critical. The shield was holding, but it was beginning to overheat. Jake stepped forward, glancing at the readings with a relaxed, almost amused expression. Rysorian commander. Human, what have you done? Our shield is now running dangerously hot. Jake scratched his chin thoughtfully, nodding at the readings. Human. Yeah, the salt can stabilize the field, but it might run a little hotter than normal. That's manageable, though. The aliens looked at him bewildered. Rysorian engineer. Manageable? At this temperature, our systems are at risk of overloading. Jake, unbothered, quickly adjusted some settings on the console, allowing a slight venting of air from the containment field to disperse the heat. Human. There we go, just a bit of airflow adjustment. Should cool it down in no time. The Rysorians were stunned by his calm reaction. To them, each shield fluctuation was catastrophic, yet this human handled the crisis as if he were fixing a loose screw. Rysorian scientist. But how do you remain so unfazed? Doesn't this situation concern you? Jake shrugged, giving a small grin. Human. You'd be surprised what humans are used to dealing with. Sometimes you just gotta improvise a little. The shield's temperature readings began to drop as the heat dispersed, stabilizing again. Each Rysorian technician looked at the human, visibly conflicted, as they murmured among themselves. The human's adaptability was beginning to make them question their own methods. Rysorian commander. Human, I'm beginning to think we've underestimated your methods. We've always relied on protocol, precision, perfection. But perhaps there's value in this flexibility of yours. Jake chuckled, adjusting his tool belt casually. Human. Sometimes you just need to get creative. When you've got limited resources, it teaches you how to think outside the box. The Rysorians exchanged thoughtful glances, realizing that their carefully maintained systems might lack the adaptability that Jake seemed to embody. The Rysorians stood in silence, watching Jake with a mixture of awe and disbelief. They had spent decades perfecting their technology, building layer upon layer of advanced systems, testing every component meticulously. Yet, here was a human, armed with nothing more than rock salt and quick thinking, solving problems they'd never imagined could arise. One of the Rysorian scientists finally spoke up, still processing the shock. Rysorian scientist. This challenges everything we understand about technological stability. We were so sure that only our protocols and precise engineering could protect us from cosmic threats. And now, rock salt? Jake smiled, clearly enjoying the bewilderment on their faces. Human. Sometimes it's not about how advanced something is. The simplest solutions are often the best. We humans like to keep things practical. After all, we don't always have access to high-tech stuff. The Rysorians looked at each other, murmuring as they started to question their own strict reliance on procedure. One by one, they began to realize that in all their focus on creating flawless systems, they might have lost touch with the value of flexibility, creativity, and a little bit of improvisation. Rysorian commander. Could it be that we've been over-engineering? Perhaps we've neglected the idea that even simple solutions hold value? Jake just shrugged, chuckling. Human. Look, all I know is, if it works, it works. Sometimes a bit of common sense and a sprinkle of rock salt can go a long way. The Rysorians were left deep in thought, questioning everything they knew. They had always seen humans as adaptable but flawed, a species that would need guidance in a galaxy full of powerful civilizations. Now they were beginning to wonder if humans had been onto something all along. One of the scientists began frantically taking notes, documenting every detail of Jake's unorthodox method, while others whispered among themselves, already planning to recommend a study on Earth's minerals. Rysorian technician. It seems we may need to revisit our protocols. Perhaps there's something in this human approach. We may have underestimated your kind's resourcefulness. Jake took a sip of his coffee, completely unbothered by the weight of the philosophical crisis he'd just sparked. Human. Hey, whatever works. Just remember to keep a bag of salt on board from now on. The aliens nodded in silent agreement, realizing that this simple, laid-back human had shown them more about resilience and problem-solving in one day than they had learned in years. Just when the Rysorian crew thought they could finally relax, a sudden wave of cosmic radiation struck the ship. The shield flickered again, and this time the temperature readings began to spike at a dangerous rate. Alarms blared once more, and the critical alert display lit up with flashing red warnings. The crew stared at Jake, panic creeping into their expressions. The shield was holding, for now, but it was at risk of collapsing if the radiation didn't subside. Rysorian technician. Human, the shield is destabilizing again. The radiation levels are rising faster than we can cool it. Jake, undeterred, calmly reached into his toolkit and pulled out something else that made the aliens exchange puzzled glances. A roll of duct tape. Rysorian engineer. Duct tape? What could that possibly do to fix a cosmic radiation surge? Jake grinned, unrolling a strip of the tape with a practiced hand. Human. You'd be surprised. Sometimes all you need is a little reinforcement. I'm just gonna patch a few things up here. The aliens watched in utter disbelief as he placed strips of duct tape along the containment panel. Each application seemed absurd to them. Duct tape was hardly an advanced material. Yet, as he covered key sections of the panel, the shield's readings began to stabilize again. The radiation's effect on the shield started to lessen. Rysorian Commander, this can't be happening. Are you telling me that duct tape is helping to contain radiation? Jake just shrugged, giving the console one last reassuring pat. Human. Sometimes a little duct tape goes a long way. It's all about managing the pressure points. The Rysorians could hardly process what they were seeing. As the shield reading stabilized further, the critical alert faded. The radiation, which had initially surged through their containment system, was now under control. All thanks to the humans' unconventional methods. The Rysorian commander looked at Jake with a newfound respect, mingled with confusion. Rysorian Commander, Human, your methods are unorthodox to say the least, but I am beginning to understand why your species is known for resilience. Jake just flashed a casual grin, as if saving a spaceship from a radiation surge was just another day's work. Human, that's what we do. Duct tape, rock salt, whatever's on hand. You don't always need fancy solutions when you've got good old-fashioned ingenuity. The Rysorians nodded slowly, feeling both humbled and inspired. Their culture had always emphasized order, precision, and flawless execution. Now, thanks to Jake's creativity, they realized there might be value in learning how to patch things up without the need for perfection. As the critical alerts went silent and the ship returned to normal, the Rysorians looked at Jake with a newfound sense of awe. They had thought of humans as a species that needed guidance, yet now they saw them as allies with their own unique strengths that no other species could replicate. As the alarms finally quieted and the shield hummed with renewed stability, the Rysorian crew stood there, processing what had just happened. They turned their gaze toward Jake, now sipping his coffee, looking perfectly at ease. Rysorian Commander, Human, Jake, your methods, they are unusual but astonishing. Perhaps our people have something to learn from yours after all. Jake chuckled, leaning against the console as if he'd just fixed a leaky faucet. Human, hey, sometimes simple solutions get the job done. No need to overthink it. And sometimes you don't need anything fancy, you just need a little creativity. The commander nodded slowly. His usual air of superiority softened. Rysorian Commander, I see that now. We Rysorians have always prized precision and efficiency. We had underestimated the power of adaptability. Perhaps our protocols and technology have their limits. Human, well, maybe you've got the best tech around, but sometimes you gotta work with what you've got. It's what humans are good at, making do with the basics. The Rysorians murmured among themselves, still visibly awestruck. A few of them started taking notes, whispering ideas to each other about emergency Earth resources and contingency protocols. They were beginning to see the value in having a flexible, adaptable mindset, qualities they'd never thought to incorporate. One of the younger technicians approached Jake, looking at him with admiration. Rysorian technician, will you teach us, Human, these contingency methods? I believe our people could benefit from learning these techniques. Jake grinned, giving them a thumbs up. Human, of course. First things first, make sure every Rysorian ship has a supply of rock salt and duct tape. Trust me, you never know when you'll need it. The commander shook his head, a hint of a smile on his usually stern face. Rysorian Commander, very well. From this day forward, our protocol shall include human contingency resources. And perhaps we'll even keep a steady supply of your coffee on hand. Jake laughed, clapping the commander on the back. Human, just don't get too addicted to coffee. Can't have you Rysorians relying on all of our best tricks." As the Rysorians added Jake's methods to their logs, they realized they had gained much more than just a stable shield. They had gained a new perspective, a reminder that sometimes flexibility, creativity, and a willingness to improvise were as valuable as the most advanced technology. The crew watched Jake pack up his things, feeling both grateful and inspired. And as he left the control room, one of the aliens muttered almost to himself, "Rysorian officer. Perhaps humans are not as primitive as we thought. Perhaps they are something more." Jake gave them a parting wave. "Human. Just remember, next time, have some rock salt ready." And with that, the Rysorian crew knew they would never look at Earth technology, or humans, the same way again. Weeks later, back on the Rysorian homeworld, the Galactic Council gathered to review the reports from the flagship's shield failure incident. Each member of the council was meticulously reviewing the data when one counselor, a seasoned Rysorian scientist, raised an eyebrow as he reached the unorthodox human solutions section in the report. The counselor looked up, baffled. "Counselor, rock salt? Duct tape? Are we truly expected to believe that these basic Earth items stabilized our ship's most advanced shields?" Another counselor nodded, sharing the same disbelief. Counselor 2, "It seems improbable, yet the evidence is clear. Not only did the humans' methods work, but they also allowed the crew to withstand a level of cosmic radiation that should have destroyed the shield entirely." The counselors exchanged glances, their perspectives shifting. Humans, once viewed as technologically primitive, had proven to be surprisingly resilient and resourceful. Finally, the head of the council cleared his throat, breaking the silence. "Head counselor, it appears we have underestimated the humans. Their contingency approaches might indeed offer us insight into strategies we had never considered. Perhaps it's time we integrate adaptable protocols into our systems." The counselors all nodded in agreement. Shortly afterward, a new directive was issued across the Rysorian fleet. Rysorian Directive 142. In any future crisis, consult human engineers immediately. Required emergency resources include rock salt, duct tape, and coffee. Back on Earth, Jake received the notification, chuckling to himself as he read it. Little did the Rysorians know that humans had been saving the day with duct tape and coffee for generations. Human, to himself, "Welcome to the human way of doing things, Rysorians. You're in good hands." And so, thanks to Jake's quick thinking, humans earned a new reputation among the stars as ingenious, adaptable problem solvers, able to fix what even the most advanced alien technology could not. The Rysorians had learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes, in the face of impossible odds, the simplest solutions are the ones you never forget.